Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. This is the first of JTeen's June 2020 sessions, webinar professional development sessions. Today, the topic is COVID-19 impacts on quaranteens, navigating college admissions. We will have two people. I'm going to introduce one, and then she will later introduce the other. But I'm excited that we have two A Millers. So both of our presenters today have first initial A, last name Miller, which I think is kind of fun. April Miller is a new colleague of mine, and Adinah Miller, who you will meet later, is a longtime friend and colleague as well. So real quick, just some information about April, and then I am going to give her the floor. April Miller is the owner and lead consultant of College Admission and Career Advocacy. She's an independent educational consultant who brings over 20 years of experience in education to her practice. Professionally, she's worked with students and their families within education across the United States in the Northeast, Northwest, and Southeast. As a speech language pathology diagnostician, sorry, and clinician, she directly served students from ages birth to 18 in a variety of clinical settings, employing best practices to treat clients holistically with a one-to-one delivery model and collaboratively with allied professionals. Serving as a clinical faculty instructor and supervisor at several colleges, she had the honor of teaching and mentoring undergraduate and graduate students in the field of communication disorders. Personally serving on committees for schools and religious organizations as a change agent in areas across the country where she raised her own children has been deeply rewarding for her. In that capacity, she helped shape new curriculum, hire innovative program staff, and help support them in their work endeavors. She currently writes articles and does webinars about education for local papers and organizations, in addition to her primary role in working with clients. Empowering people of all ages and stages of life to find their calling, and then facilitating their pathway to developing into the best version of themselves is what she enjoys most in her role as an independent educational consultant. And without further ado, I welcome April Miller.
Thank you so much, Erica, for that wonderful introduction and for inviting me to speak to youth group directors across the United States about the impacts of COVID-19 and the pandemic on college admissions and enrollment. Good afternoon, everybody, or good morning to some of you. Thank you for joining us, and I'm hoping that you find this to be a useful resource for you. Thanks for taking the time to not only listen, but to invest yourselves in the betterment of the teens that you serve. I know that the pandemic has thrown a monkey wrench into life for teens of all ages, as well as for adults. And part of your role is to help the teens you serve to get grounded, to help them make sense of the world around them, so that they can continue to embrace their love of Judaism and to enjoy this stage of life with their friends. Your role is one that I am familiar with, as I worked for B'nai B'rith Youth Organization for a few years as a city director in San Diego when I first graduated from college. Hold on one moment. See that my camera keeps clicking off. Empowering young leaders was both a rewarding and challenging career for me. I have great respect for the work that all of you are doing and the powerful role that you play in the lives of these teens as an adult mentor with whom they can talk to about all kinds of issues. As you know, and as I learned, your role is unique in that you aren't mom or dad with expectations or a school teacher who is grading these students. Yet you are an adult that they trust and that they rely on. I want to help make your job a little bit easier today. And it's my intention to share information with you and resources that you can utilize to support your teens meaningfully. Therefore, the goal of my talk is threefold. First, to give you the most up-to-date information for your college-bound teens. Second, to encourage you to share this information with them in order to alleviate some of their stress. And third, and most importantly, to help them utilize this information to empower them in future decision-making. All of the resource links that I share will be on a document that I can email to you. All you have to do after the webinar is send me a quick message and reference the JTeen webinar, and I will be happy to provide you with the resources that I mentioned in my talk today, so you don't need to write them down. My understanding is that most of you work with high school teens. So that means that you have juniors who are trying to determine if they should apply to college in the coming months, or if they should take a gap year and wait for the aftermath of the pandemic to settle down. It also means you have high school seniors who are weighing options about what to do in the fall. On the younger end, you have rising 9th and 10th graders who are facing the beginnings of their high school journey and wondering how to best maximize their high school experiences for their future resumes for college. If any of these scenarios apply to the teens you work with, and any of these teens, or maybe all of them, are overwhelmed by the prospects of figuring out how to sort through all the information that's on the internet in order to make important decisions, I'm here to help you with that. My talk will be split into 3 topics. First, rising seniors who are navigating the college application process. Second, rising college freshmen navigating college enrollment. And third, gap year and other options. So let's begin with your rising seniors. They've either recently completed their junior year, depending on where in the country you are, or they will be finishing school in the coming weeks. The topics that are on their mind are the following: AP exams, standardized testing, including SATs and ACTs, determining college lists, thinking about college essays and applications, and of course, college affordability. Students who, sorry, let me pause again. Okay. That's okay, I got it. Students who are organized and savvy are probably planning to apply early decision or perhaps early action in the fall. And that means that they need to utilize the time this summer to get all of the paperwork done. It's a complicated process, and some of them may not have started, some of them may be in it, or they might use their summer to get it completely done. In this moment, another hot topic is AP exams. Due to the impacts of COVID-19, students have had to engage in a very different process for taking their exams. They must take the exams at the same time worldwide on their home computers. And perhaps some of you have heard them complaining about this process. Some of them got through the process successfully, but because this process is unprecedented and hasn't been tested out, we're really in the guinea pig stage. And there are a lot of students all over the country who were not able to successfully upload their AP exam results. And therefore, they have had to reschedule their testing. There are not a lot of dates scheduled for redoing their testing. Hopefully your students are on top of this process, but if they aren't and they need more information, they can go on to the College Board website and get more details. Some students have scheduled their makeup exams, and those are in process throughout the month of June. The College Board, as I mentioned, is the organizing agency that manages all AP testing. They have now closed registration for makeup exam requests. So if you have a student who scheduled the makeup, but for some reason they need an exception to make a change for when they're going to do the makeup, they can fill out an AP exception testing request form, which is now open and closes on June 7th. So the timeline is pretty tight. The testing dates are from June 22nd to June 30th. and the test will be offered several times within a day. But after June 30th, this is important. There are no future test dates scheduled in 2020 for making up the AP exams. So please check in with your teens who are in AP courses to make sure that they're on track with taking their AP exams. As I mentioned, they can go to the College Board website for updates and information. And that website address is apcoronavirusupdate.collegeboard.org. Now let's talk about the SAT, because that also follows under the umbrella of the College Board. The website information for the SAT is collegereadiness.collegeboard.org/SAT. There are no SATs being offered in June or July. However, there will be tests monthly from August through December. And these tests will be offered on location, as has been done traditionally at high schools and at local colleges. Registration for each of the test dates closes approximately a month prior to the test. So students who are rising seniors who have not taken the SAT yet at all will be given priority for registration. Since there have been no SAT tests administered in March, April, May, or June, there's a large number of students throughout the United States that will be looking to register as soon as possible. So please encourage your students to go on to the College Board site to register for a test. The next test date is August 29th. They have plenty of time to register for this test date, as long as spots don't fill up. Even though students may prefer to test at a site in close proximity to where they live, you may need to encourage them to choose the next closest site if that one's unavailable. If students intend to apply to colleges that require SAT scores, it's imperative that they get online and that they get their testing done as soon as possible. Now, regarding the ACT exam, there is an at-home test date, which is rapidly approaching on June 13th. This will be the first at-home test administration for the ACT. So we're all kind of waiting with bated breath to see how this goes. The next ACT test date is set for July 18th, and registration closes on June 19th. Again, please encourage your students to go to the website, act.org, in order to register for the ACT if they intend to take it. At this time, there are test dates monthly planned for September, October, November, and December. Now, while some colleges are waiving the requirement for standard test scores, others are only extending the dates for the testing, and yet others still remain inflexible and require that the test scores be submitted with college applications. This brings me to the next point about standardized testing, which is that due to the pandemic, many colleges and universities have chosen to be test optional for students applying in the 2020-2021 application period for enrollment the following year. At this moment, you may or may not know this, there are over 1,200 institutions of higher education that have made standardized testing optional. That's over 25% of the schools in the US. There isn't a place where you can go online to see a current list of all the schools that have gone test optional, as names continue to be added daily and weekly. But please encourage students to log onto the following website for recent updates, usnews.com. They can get some information there, but the best source of information is going to the specific colleges that they intend to apply to. And I need to make a really important point about test optional. It does not mean that students don't have to take the test. It might mean that scores will not be required for admission. However, the schools may require the scores to be submitted for a student to enroll. It might mean, what it sounds like it means, that students don't have to take a test at all. So it's important for kids to get this information directly from the schools that they're applying to. Okay, moving on. This is a lot of information that I'm sharing. And again, as I mentioned before, I will be providing all of the links on a page. So if you just want to get that page for me, you can email me after my talk. Okay, college websites, specific schools. It's the best source of information relating to everything for COVID-19. Students can go on the sites to find details, and they can reach out to the admissions offices directly. There is an article out there that's called 4 Things to Know Before Applying to a Test Optional College. And it's on a website that's collegedata.com. So there are a lot of resources out there. I'm just pointing out the ones that I find to be most useful and accurate. Now I'd like to move on to a different topic, college lists. You probably know that most college-bound students develop a list of colleges that they intend to apply to based on their profile and their preferences. And this list will include safety schools, likely schools, and reaches. Due to the impacts of COVID-19, many of the variables that students consider are changing dramatically. And I'm sure you've heard this in the course of conversation. College affordability is being impacted by parents losing their jobs and family finances changing significantly for people. Perhaps students and families need to do more research into financial scholarships and financial aid in order to determine affordability. Many students might now choose to apply to in-state and public schools with lower tuition, knocking private schools and out-of-state schools off of their lists. Some families are also changing their perspective on geographic location for college, as they might now want their students to stay close to home for both affordability and logistics. As we all know, the travel industry is being impacted significantly by the pandemic, and it may become quite challenging for a student to attend a school thousands of miles away from home, because that requires airline travel. And we have yet to see the total impact on the airlines and the flight industry. Pre-COVID-19, families may have planned to visit college campuses in order to get a real feel for if the school is a good fit for their teen. However, now campuses are closed. We've had to shift gears and attend virtual college fairs and virtual college tours. Please encourage students to log into the websites for the colleges that they're interested in and sign up for those tours. Until further notice of colleges reopening, this is the best way for students to learn more about the individual schools of interest. Some families might have more severe financial impacts, and maybe they are unable to consider a 4-year college at this time. A recent statistic of up to 35% of students who intended to go to a 4-year school are now exploring other options. So we anticipate a huge rise in graduates staying at home and attending a local community college. There are other families that now are in dire straits financially, and they need more income. Therefore, the students in these families who were college-bound are redefining their role as one of an essential worker for their family. Their college dreams are being put on hold for the time being. These students may still have some open time to themselves, though, and if they want to continue their education while at home and working, they can opt to explore free online college courses through some prestigious universities like Harvard and MIT, among numerous others. There are also some students who may opt to put college on hold in order to do an internship or engage in volunteerism, which is very much needed to help rebuild communities. Or maybe students want to seek out meaningful employment to develop their skills and explore interests for future career options, which may or may not require higher education. Many students are going to consider a gap year program, and we're going to talk more about this later in the webinar. Thousands of once college-bound students are now investigating other practical options for what to do after high school if a 4-year college degree is not a viable option. I want to continue giving you direction now for how you can specifically guide those students who do intend to apply to college. This is for rising seniors who are moving forward with the application process so that they can apply either in the fall or via rolling admissions or regular admission next January. As we know, the landscape of a college education and the experiences on a college campus will continue evolving over the next several years as we feel the impacts of COVID-19. It's eliciting a transformation in the delivery model that we're only beginning to work on. For many students, the summer is a prime time for them to write their essays and get their applications done, now that summer camps and other travel options have been canceled. The Common App is a great website for students to fill out the application, and the Common App can be used from hundreds of colleges in the US. Keep in mind, not all colleges allow the Common App. Many schools still require a student to fill out their specific application. One of the important things to note about this application process is that there are several different kinds of essays that colleges require. The Common App has one specific essay, but an individual school may have up to 3 or 4 different essays that are either optional or required. The best way for a student to find out what essays are required is to go to individual college websites and get that information. Essays are extremely important in the college admission process, now more than they were before, especially because of test optional application processes. Testing, standardized test scores, were a very heavily weighted criteria for assessing student fit. And for many schools, as I mentioned, over 25% of the colleges in the US that are waiving standardized tests, now they need to look at another measure in order to determine a student's fit for their school. So these test scores, which are no longer being looked at or not weighted as heavily, are taking a back seat to a more qualitative measure, which really reveals a lot of information about a student's personality, character, and values. So it's really important for students to find out when they're applying to a school, what is the exact role of the essay in the application process? Because it varies. For some schools, they want to look at a student's ability to write and their ability to put a sentence together and have a voice on paper. But other schools are looking at the essay, wanting to know the true character and values of a student. These are questions that a student can ask admissions officers at a specific school, either by doing live chat or by emailing them. Some students have been asking if the pandemic's a good topic to write an essay on, and my answer to that is actually pretty simple. The topic of the essay is not nearly as important as what the essay reveals about a student's character and values. If a student wants to write about COVID-19 and its negative impact on their social life, and they share what a bummer it's been, that is not a good topic for the essay. However, if a student has had a transformative life experience as a direct correlation to COVID-19 impacts, then that's a winner. Please encourage students to seek out guidance on brainstorming topics and structuring their college essays. And don't let them underestimate the importance of essays in the evaluation of their candidacy. For students who need guidance with all of the timeline and tasks for college applications over the summer, independent educational consultants, unlike public school counselors and private school counselors, are not on summer break, and we are diligently working full-time to support college-bound students. We're also here to help students evaluate other options for what to do after high school. So this brings me to the next group of students that we serve, the graduating seniors who are done with high school or finishing in the coming weeks. So you have teens that have been accepted to college. Maybe they've even put 1 or 2 deposits down on some schools, but they haven't yet made that firm decision about whether or not to go to college in the fall. How has the pandemic impacted the delivery model for higher education? Well, colleges are currently exploring 3 different delivery models for college this fall. At this point in time, there are some colleges, including the state schools in California, who have declared that they will continue with the platform that started this spring, Zoom school and virtual education online. However, there are other schools like Purdue and Harvard, among others, that have been quoted in articles stating they have plans to move students back on campus with education on site. Of course, there are many adaptations that must go into place according to the CDC guidelines for social distancing and other safeguard practices. And there are still other schools that are investigating a hybrid model for education. Some of them have talked about a situation where students enroll for a course and they alternate. 1 week they attend the course in class, and the next week they attend it via Zoom conference. So half the students are in class 1 week and half are in the next week. There are also colleges that are talking about changing the timeline and the dates for the fall term, making them shorter so that students can start school earlier but end school earlier, maybe even by Thanksgiving, so that they can go home and be with their families. How is this all going to play out? None of us know yet. We're just going to have to wait and see. The decisions are not entirely in the hands of the colleges. Some of the schools, unfortunately, are in the middle of lawsuits from students who are seeking financial compensation for the spring quarter of 2020. There are a couple of colleges that have already shut down and declared bankruptcy. And there are many more colleges that are compromised financially to the point where they don't know whether or not they can afford to continue providing education to students via any model this fall. The one thing we know for certain is that there's more unpredictability than anything else. New updates are emerging daily. And while colleges are asking families to pay for the year ahead, none of the schools can guarantee that the doors will be open in the fall term. Many students don't want to go to college if Zoom school is the platform. Immunocompromised students cannot physically take the risk of being on a campus with the pandemic endangering their health. And it's a fact, in a recent study, 33% of students said they'll consider deferring their education if school goes all virtual. There's also the issue of affordability. For students who need to appeal their financial aid packages, they must contact the specific college that they plan to attend, not the government, even though they initially filled out the FAFSA application for aid with the government. I cannot overstate the difficulty that this generation of students and their families are facing in making decisions regarding what to do regarding higher education. State governors will have the ultimate say in whether or not colleges can legally reopen their campuses in the fall. Furthermore, there will be costly and comprehensive measures required for safety on the campuses. But ultimately, it falls on the individual students and their families to make their own decisions about the year ahead. So now I'd like to turn to the myriad of possibilities that exist for students who choose not to go to college in the coming year, as well as for those rising seniors who choose to delay applying for college for the following year. As I mentioned earlier, students can look for internships, volunteerism opportunities, paid employment, and gap year options. All of these possibilities are topics that students and families can explore on their own. But I can also help students as an IEC with investigating the next right decision for life after high school. I want to take a few minutes to share about gap year programs. There are businesses that specifically plan and promote all kinds of gap year programs. Teen Life is one such organization. Their website is gooverseas.com. Another interesting option is something that Champlain College recently created. It's called the Virtual Gap Program. You can learn more about that by Googling Champlain College or the article, Virtual Gap Year Helps Students Manage the Stress of Coronavirus. NBC News recently put out a resourceful article titled, Class of 2020, College Can Wait. It's Time to Take a Gap Year. This article was written by Abby Fallett, and she's an award-winning social entrepreneur and expert on the changing landscape of education. She's also the founder and CEO of Global Citizen Year, a nonprofit that's committed to reinventing the gap year to launch a new generation of global leaders. In her article, she stated, college is the single business investment we make in a young person's life. And yet, the vast majority of students arrive unprepared to make the most of this experience. I couldn't agree with her more. The current statistic on the percentage of students who enter a four-year public college, university, and graduate was 33% in 2019. For private colleges, the statistic increases to 52%. And that's all prior to the pandemic. So long before COVID-19 entered the scene, we've had a really big problem with students going to college and not being prepared to take on and complete a four-year degree in the US. Therefore, that coupled with the pandemic leads me to encourage you to have discussions with your students about the possibility of a gap year. So now, with that entree, I would like to introduce somebody who has exciting information to share with you about a cutting-edge gap year program. Adinah Miller is going to join us. She's the program director of Tivnu, Building Justice, the social justice gap year program in Portland, Oregon. Adinah has been professionally and personally engaged in creating diverse and vibrant Jewish communities for many years. Before Tivnu, Adinah spent 6 years as Dean of Jewish Life, Jewish Studies teacher, and house parent at the American Hebrew Academy, the former Jewish boarding school in Greensboro, North Carolina. And before that, Adinah did graduate studies in Italian Jewish history, and she co-founded Grad Jew at Yale, a community of Jewish grad and professional students in New Haven, Connecticut. Okay, take it away, Adinah.
Thank you, April. So I know that everybody on this call interacts with teens in different ways, some in more formal educational settings, some in youth group settings, some may be parents or grandparents of teens. And so what I'm hoping to give you is just a quick overview of what the gap year choice could entail, and specifically in the age of COVID. And then, can you all hear me? Is there a nodding? Yes, okay, good. Zoom just talks to me. And to talk a little bit about the Tivnu gap year specifically, but I will save that for the end. Is it possible for me to share my screen, Erica?
It should be. Go ahead and try, and if
it says it's disabled.
Oh, there you go. Go for it now.
Aha, okay. All right. And let's see if I can present this. Present. Can people see my screen now? Said it, yes? Okay, great. So how do you figure out if a gap year is right for the student that you're working with? According to the Gap Year Association, from whom I'm getting a bunch of these statistics, enrollment in gap year programs has gone up 900% between 2006 and 2018, and that's before COVID, that's before coronavirus. The U.S. lags behind some other countries in interest in gap years, and so this is a kind of a resurgence in interest. Little known fact, the Young Judea Year Course is the oldest gap year program. 1 in 6 high school seniors, I think April just mentioned this, according to this study that recently came out, who thought they were going to go straight to a 4-year college, now are thinking they'll do something different, and 35% of them are planning to take a gap year. So what are some of the reasons people do a gap year? I'll give you some of the reasons we hear from our Tivnu participants. They want to take a break from academic pressure between high school and college. They want to gain more independence, develop new skills, and that could be interpersonal skills or like life skills like cooking and taking public transportation. It could be career skills if they're interested in doing an internship that'll help them build that area of their life. At Tivnu, we also build houses so they get tool training and they learn how to use power tools. They learn how to manage their lives. While they're not dealing with the pressures of academics, it's an opportunity to start doing some of that adulting and time management and all of those kinds of things without the pressure of also fulfilling their school requirements. A number of our participants come because they want to connect their Jewish and their social justice priorities and put those together in a new way. They want to do something tangible to make the world a better place. And Portland is a cool place to explore. And the Pacific Northwest is a beautiful region. And then they want to make friends. And ala chat kama v'kama, how much more so now with the uncertainties of the pandemic, the gap year is becoming a very appealing opportunity. So these are some outcomes, and I know it's very small. This is not an eye test, but these are some of the outcomes that gap year alumni have reported. And there's a little key in the bottom right corner, and it's also color coordinated in the top, except I think they've made a mistake because it says career is like aqua and citizenship is green, but I think that's reversed. So there are a lot of different priorities, and they kind of fall into these four categories: personal things like time for reflection, developing myself as a person, increasing my maturity and confidence. Things like career goals, like those kinds of skills, helping me decide what kind of job I want to have. Citizenship, which they include things like knowing people in places around the world, seeing myself as a global citizen, and learning more about and volunteering in the community. And then finally, academic skills, which you see are mostly grouped towards the bottom. Those are the least reported outcomes. And in fact, a lot of people asked us with Tivnu if we give college credit for the learning that we do together. And it's something we've considered a lot. But what it comes down to really is that usually when I talk to the students, they really want a break from doing the learning for the sake of credit. And they like the opportunity to just learn because it's something they're interested in. And so that is less important to them. And parents ask me that a lot. And then when I explain that, they're like, oh yeah, I want my kids to have a break actually. So it's something we may pursue in the future, but there are some programs that do give college credit as well, including some of the Israel programs. So what happens with college? April mentioned some statistics about graduation rates. This is also about the time. Gappers, or people who do gap year programs, their average time to graduation is just about 4 years. It's a little longer for people who don't do gap year programs. And 55% of gappers who were surveyed in this survey have a GPA of 3.7 or above. So if people are worried that they're going to forget how to school, how to do college because they take a year off from doing calculus, it turns out they do pretty well. And I brought a few kind of examples from work with participants in Tivnu. Who was really not motivated in high school, did not really like school, didn't work so hard, wasn't excited about going to college, came and did an internship where he worked at the Criminal Justice Reform Clinic and decided he absolutely wanted to be a criminal justice lawyer and change the system and work with incarcerated people and all kinds of things, and like left Tivnu excited to go take some college classes and bump up his GPA and his application options and go on to law school eventually. Z worked her tuchus off in high school. She was super driven and expected to be super driven when going on to Mount Holyoke after Tivnu, but she really just wanted that break in between and a chance to focus on things other than academics, because she had so kind of narrowed her, laser focused on her grades and so on. Jay went to college for a year before Tivnu and then joined us after that, but he didn't really feel like he was in the right place or on the right track. And what I want to say about Jay is that he ended up, after doing a lot of building of houses at Tivnu, he decided he wanted to become an electrician and not go back to college for, a liberal arts degree or something like that. And I think it's really terrific when our participants and their parents can see eye to eye about what the best course of action is for them. And for him, that was the right choice. That's certainly not the same choice for everybody. So what about civic and Jewish engagement? 63% of those surveyed voted in the election right before the survey, which is in contrast to, I think, 46% of people in that 18 to 29-year-old range who voted in the 2016 election, which is, a presidential election, so it's a really high voting record instead of more of a local election. 89% said they'd volunteered in the last month. So it's this kind of new commitment that not everybody has, and it really gets strengthened through volunteer kinds of gap years. And then in terms of Jewish, a few more anecdotes. Paige called me 11 months after she finished Tivnu. She said, I'm planning a social justice Seder for my entire college. I know we did a session together at Tivnu about how to plan your own social justice Seder. Can we go back over it and think about how we can do it for my whole college? AF is now the social and environmental justice chair on her Hillel board, and she says that her whole application was about her experience at Tivnu. AF wrote that, and I can give you the whole quote. She said, my peers taught me so much about the diversity of the Jewish community. While challenging at times, being surrounded by such diversity really pushed me to celebrate our differences. I learned that our commonalities are stronger than our differences. And this is, certainly a goal of the Tivnu Gap Year program, but many Jewish Gap Year programs are trying to kind of celebrate those differences and varieties and offer opportunities to engage. Oops, I got to go back one. Engage in all that they were hoping, all that they might get out of the Jewish community in their lives and contribute to it, I should say. And in fact, if you go back to H at the top, she said, I'm more excited about Judaism, more determined to keep it as part of my life, believe more in the connection between Judaism and social justice. I generally feel much more inclined to be involved in Judaism because I feel motivated to experience and practice in ways that I want to, and I feel much less restricted about the ways I need to do that. Tivnu helped me understand the ways in which Judaism and social justice relate, which makes me really excited to be involved in social action with other Jews in a Jewish context. So for families that were considering a gap year program in Israel and are now concerned about the international component, the international travel, or being so far away from home, should not despair that there are ways of celebrating Jewishness and exploring Jewishness here in this country as well that really do lead to that increased engagement and interest in being a part of and possibly leaders in the Jewish community here in the U.S. All right, now my shameless plug for Tivnu. That's the warning. So there are 4 basic components of the Tivnu Gap Year program: working, learning, living, and playing. Working is as unpaid internships. We are specifically interested in placing them at internships that don't pay, because we know that means that we are able to work with organizations that couldn't afford to have an intern otherwise if we required that they pay. And so we think this is a real accessibility issue. And participants get to choose the kinds of internships they're interested in, and then I create a customized internship schedule for every participant. So they might have 2 or 3 different internships they do each week, but then they follow those same ones through for the whole 9 months. So they get a chance to have some variety each week, but also the depth and the relationship building and the skill building of the year. And some of that could be, as I said, we do some building. We build tiny houses for these villages of houseless people who live in tiny houses and share communal bathrooms and kitchens and so on.
There you go. Sorry.
Learning, we do, our educational curriculum includes learning about different social justice issues from a global, a local, and a Jewish perspective. Each week, we're looking at different things such as labor, or immigration and refugees, or housing and affordable housing, or racial justice, all kinds of different topics. Living, the group lives together in a house or 2 houses, or possibly next year 3 houses. Each house has an RA or a madrich or a madricha who's living with them, and they learn to form that community within a community, and they learn to, again, have those independent living skills as well as communal living skills. And finally, playing, we go hiking and camping and rafting and build an igloo and all kinds of fun things in the Pacific Northwest because it's a beautiful place to be. So that is, I just want to stop there and say that April's going to give us some time for questions, and I think that might be next. I'm not sure. Back to you, April.
Yes, that is next. So, Erica, let us know what questions people may have typed in, or if there's people who've been raising their hand that we should call on to ask their questions.
So in the chat, we've had some sharing of some additional websites, so definitely make sure to look in the chat box. But if you have any questions about anything that you've heard so far, feel free to unmute or throw something in the chat. And I know April's gonna, oh, sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
Sorry, I just had a quick question for Adinah. I had received one of your emails saying that the application process closed June 1st, but that you're accepting late applications. Is that still the case? Do you still have a lot of openings? Like, where do you stand if we want to promote Tivnu?
Thank you for asking, Debbie. Yes, so we received, we are still accepting applications as space allows, as you said. We have probably 2 spaces left for next year, unless we decide to open up a third house, in which case we would have like another 8 after that. We are just almost completely full, and there are like 4 applications that I'm expecting to get this week of people who had personal reasons they needed to deal with. So if people are still interested, they should definitely reach out, because we would consider opening a third house and getting a third madrasa for that. And I should say that something about financial aid also, which is that Tivnu feels that as a social justice organization, it would be completely antithetical to our mission to make it only possible for people with higher economic means to be able to participate. And so we're really committed to, as long as our financial aid monies last, to make Tivnu a possibility for every participant, no matter their economic situation.
Great, thank you. And thank you both for this. I have to hop off because I have another call at 2. So this was great information.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie.
Any other quick questions before April says a few final words, and then Dana also? So I want to say, before I turn it back over to April real quick, there's been a lot of information shared that I think would be incredibly helpful to get to our parents. So within the next hour and 15 minutes, I've got another call right after this, but as soon as that's finished, I'm going to upload this really quickly to Facebook. So feel free to share it, download it, share it, do whatever you want with it. But especially those, those links, those websites, some dates, all that stuff could be really good information that their kids probably know, but haven't necessarily communicated to their parents. So please feel free to share along to colleagues as well. All right, April, back to you.
Okay, sure. Thank you, Adinah, for sharing all about Tivnu. It sounds like an amazing organization. And as you all heard from my talk, I definitely encourage students to do a gap year, even though my business is about helping students plan the college admissions process. I really, now more than ever, I'm encouraging students to really take a step back and take a breath and consider other options that will really benefit them as a whole human being. Thank you, everybody, for participating today. I just wanted to let you know that in addition to working with students who are college bound, I also have programs for students who are rising 8th to 10th graders. And in the summer, I have a summer program, and it's all online, of course, because of the pandemic. And it's helping students make choices for what they do while in high school outside of the classroom. So I have a lot of guest speakers from different communities, charities in my local community, as well as people talking about leadership and social action on a global scale and project management. And I'm really focusing on working with teens to help them figure out how they really want to grow and setting some goals for what they do with their time outside of the classroom while in high school. And if you want more information about my packages and services, my website is collegeadmissionandcareeradvocacy.com. My phone number is 269-0525. And my email address, if you want me to email you the list of the resource links that I shared, is aprilmillercaca@gmail.com. So that's what I wanted to share. And I hope that my information helps you and helps some of your students. I know sometimes when I talk to people about all of the impacts of COVID-19 on college admissions and enrollment, they walk away with more questions than they had when they first approached me. But the reality is there's changes every day. And so my job is to keep up with it so that I can share information with parents who don't want to spend a gazillion hours online trying to get the answers to their specific questions. So thanks for joining me, everybody.
Thank
Thanks,
you
Erica.
so much. April, thank you so much. Amazing information. Adinah, thank you. You were the perfect complement to each other, and I appreciate that. All right, Dana, before we go, there is a program going on tonight. I'm going to share my screen unless you want to share yours. I've got the flyer up.
Please.
Oh, hold on. Maybe I have it up. Okay. Now, you're welcome to start talking while I'm playing with my technology.
So I am going to put the link into the chat for anyone who's interested in registering. So I am the Senior Program Director of JTI Boston Jewish Teen Initiative of Greater Boston. And coming from the motivations of our teens, actually, we have created this low-key convo, it's called. So it is a really informal conversation for teens and Jewish educators. I should say that the focus is really on addressing teen questions, but we absolutely invite educators to attend and to sort of be flies on the wall during the session. So we are going to be talking about racial injustice and activism and Black Lives Matter, and how our teens can feel empowered to shine their light on others, and really how they can best support their brown and Black peers. So we have two activists actually who will be joining us, Jared Jackson and also Amelia Diamond, who's on this flyer, and it'll be moderated by two of our peer leadership fellows as well. So we would definitely encourage anyone who's interested in attending and joining us, and certainly feel free to share this information with your teens and their families as well.
Dana, thank you for letting me put you on the spot. I know as soon as you said who you were, I was like, wait, she can actually announce this herself. So again, it is tonight. So if you or your teens are interested, please get the word out quickly. I have already registered, as I know quite a few other professionals have, and I promise to be quiet and listen. So thank you all very, very much for joining us today. Please pass the information along. Our next J-Teen webinar is next Thursday, June 11th at 1 p.m. and it is called Plan A, Plan B, Plan C. We probably will have to come up with enough plans to take us all the way to Z, but please participate. We want your feedback. We want to hear what you're doing. We want to answer questions. But again, very informal conversation with colleagues so that we can help one another navigate what our next few months into next year are going to look like. So thank you all. Take care.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.